I'm pretty sure that once you're a hurt player, that's what you are. And this is a tough one to talk about for me because as an executive, I was a little different. I always assumed that while a player's history was meaningful to me, that it would change during the next particular season. That if I had a player who had these soft tissue damage or injuries, who just somehow was finding a way to be injured way more often than a normal player and was playing 50, 80, 100, 110, even 120 games a year, I said, no, this is the year they're going to give me 145 plus. Except it never worked that way. I was looking around at the transactions, which is something that Coke and I like to do for sport, which is why we don't have a lot of other friends or a social life that really would make sense to anyone but ourselves. And we came across the Minnesota Twins. The Minnesota Twins are in a division that is eminently winnable. It puts the M in mediocre, but pay attention on March 26th when we do our preview. But the Detroit Tigers may be the best team in the division. You never want to forget about the Guardians. You only want to forget about the White Sox. And we were looking at the Twinkies, and we saw that Royce Lewis has a moderate hamstring strain. You may not know that name, but let me introduce you to who Royce Lewis is. Royce Lewis is a first-year arbitration player who is a far above average player when on the field. However, he's had a problem staying on the field. As a matter of fact, he got to arbitration only playing 152 career games. There are people who don't get a year of service until they've played 152 games. Royce Lewis, while he has 33 home runs over those 152 games, which would be one hell of a season if it were a season, driving in 104, a WAR close to 3.5. The problem is it took him 3 actual seasons to get there. So you take the player to arbitration, you pay him his money, and you say to yourself, this is just early career stuff. It's all going to be fine. And then he wakes up one day, you're in spring training, and he's got another injury. There's no timetable for his return. He will start the season on the injured list. At 25 years old, it would appear that while he's torn his right ACL twice, while he's had an oblique, abductor, quad, hamstring, and knee situation, that these are not unrelated. And that maybe he has learned how to be a major leaguer from Byron Buxton or his other teammate, Carlos Correa. Because those are 2 other Twins who are really good players. 2 other Twins who are paid a tremendous amount of money. 2 other Twins where the feeling was, it's going to be better now. Except Buxton has only played over 100 games twice in his whole career. Last year, he only played 102 games. He's basically averaging only 81 games a year over his career. Do you know that means you're hurt for 3 months a year? And still the Twins were pressured into giving him $100 million. Why? Because as executives, we get seduced. I can't tell you that feeling when you see a player perform who you know has an injury problem, but you see what he does when he's healthy, and you say to yourself, totally irrationally, you say, wow, we got this. This is his moment. Well, guess what? He's never had a moment. What about Carlos Correa? Another example. Do you remember the pressure that Minnesota had to sign him to that long-term deal? Do you remember how crazy that was? And then they did it. And now, do you know that Carlos Correa, he had another year last year? He played in 86 games. This guy has never been able to stay healthy. And still, Rocco Baldelli in his 7th year was able to ride his pitching staff, led by Pablo Lopez, to an 82-game win regular season last year. And in fact, DraftKings right now, odds subject to change, tells you that the Twins are plus 210 favorites to win that division. To me, that is you, the people, you, the betting public, looking at this team, looking at these names, and dreaming of a moment. It's not going to come. You usually like to say that past results are not indicative of future performance. I lived a whole career that way, whether it was Wall Street or baseball. But I've been taught over time that, in fact, past injury performance is exactly indicative of future IL time. The Twins aren't the only team dealing with injury, that's for sure.